So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, sea and community. And we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm joining from Cubby Cubby Land on the beautiful Sunshine Coast up in Queensland, where it is very cold, or at least we think it is very cold up here, but probably nothing in comparison to our southern counterparts. So some of you know me, some of you don't, but I am the founder of Champion Health Agency, a talent agency for lived experience, but I'm also have had the pleasure of being the youth ambassador for the Continence Foundation for a number of years. And this event is brought to you by the Continence Foundation, who have done amazing work to help people with lived experience of incontinence for many, many years, over 30 years. So I was born with a rare congenital disability called Bacterial Association. And so when I was 7 months old, I had to have complete reconstructive surgery and I was left with lifelong bowel incontinence. And knowing that this was not something that I'd ever be able to change, it led me to do a lot of consumer advocacy. So I'm really proud to be joined by 3 other people who have lived experience of incontinence. And unfortunately, Christin was not able to join us tonight due to an emergency. But we have a lot of stories to share, and we really encourage you to ask questions and to interact with us because we'd love to be able to answer anything that you're wondering about and to help break down any stigmas and to help shine a light on something that so many of us experience. Oh, Kristin's been able to join. So we're really, really fortunate to be able to talk about this topic that is, very common. 1 in 4 people experience incontinence. So just a little bit of housekeeping. So closed captioning is available at the bottom. If you click more, you can see to enable captions. And the session is being recorded. So those of you are attending, we can't see your videos, we can't hear you. So you can be free to do whatever you like, only we will be the ones that are recorded. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we do have a Q&A down the bottom. This is where we'll be answering questions from. So please feel free to start putting in any questions from now right up until the end of the session, because we want to make sure that we answer the questions that are important to you. But we also have a chat feature at the bottom. So please feel free to use this to interact with each other throughout the panel, but also share anything with the panelists, whether that be your own lived experiences, how you've contributed to the continence space, or show some encouragement or support for our panelists. So we do ask that you be respectful and kind and compassionate, as we do want to create a space where people feel safe and comfortable sharing their experiences, but also sharing their thoughts. So that's enough from me for now. And I'd really like to hand over to our fantastic panelists who are joining me tonight. So I'd like to start off with Geordie. Can you please introduce yourself and share your experience of incontinence?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Geordie and I'm 24 years old, 25 years old actually. I live with Crohn's disease, so I have dealt with bowel incontinence for basically my entire life to an extent. And more recently in the last year, I have lived with a colostomy bag, so complete fecal incontinence, I suppose. And, continence is such an important thing and it's played such an integral role in my life. So it's just something I'm very passionate about.
Fantastic, Geordie. Thank you so much for that. Susan, over to you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm coming to you from Mengen, which is Brisbane, and I grew up on Butchulla country, which is around the Maryborough, Hervey Bay district. And I'd just like to ask everyone to always think about what life was like for Aboriginal people before colonisation. Okay, so my experience of incontinence started late in life. I will be 56 this year, and it firstly started with bladder incontinence, or more latchkey urgency. I think if you've had that feeling where you've come home from work and you're absolutely busting to get through the door, and as soon as you pull your key out, you just about wet your pants. Thankfully, that's come under control a little bit, but I have been experiencing fecal incontinence as a result of some gastro upsets, some medication that I take, and I've had bouts of diverticulitis, which I know has created some upsets over the years. My ex-husband also had a bowel perforation and lived with a colostomy bag for about 12 months. So I'm well aware I've done the changes, and I've been there for him to support him during that journey. And my attitude about incontinence is it happens, and it shouldn't be a problem. We should just
We've just lost you, Susan. We might go to Jess. Jess, would you mind introducing yourself? Thank you, Susan.
No problem. Hi everyone, my name is Jess. My pronouns are they, them. I'm coming to you from the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations land down in Victoria. And as you can probably tell, from a hospital as well. So my experience with incontinence has been primarily due to gastroparesis. I deal with a lot of I guess mixed bowels, and I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So it also means that I get a lot of like wet bladder leakage as well, urgency, and have even had to kind of look at the prospect of having to have a loop ileostomy at some point in the future. So that's also from adhesions that are happening throughout my bowel because of endometriosis as well. So I'll have a few different challenges on my hands, but I think my view is that incontinence is a thing that can happen to anyone at any age, and that's okay. Like it doesn't mean that we need to stop getting on with our lives or anything like that. And I think once you find your community and your people and that we start those conversations, then it really does break down those barriers. And there's a lot of people out there just like you. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Jess. And Christin, over to you to introduce yourself and share your experience of incontinence.
Hi everyone, my name is Christin. You're more than welcome to call me Chris. I come from Sydney, which is Gadigal land of the Eora Nation. And my story is about a big question mark of what do you do to live through incontinence when you don't have an answer on why that you don't have an answer. So my story has been about, just like Jess, I decided that I had incontinence quite young, and a lot of my story has been coming to terms with the fact that I am a young person with incontinence and how I navigate through my life with that big question mark of why I have it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Christin. I think it can be a huge barrier when we don't know why we have it. And I think that leads into another question that I actually had prepared, and then we'll go to Emily's question in the Q&A. And what do you actually think the barriers are to seeking help for incontinence? Anyone can jump in to answer that. Geordie, you're on mute. I can see your articulate answer how you're speaking.
I was going to say I feel like a big barrier is it's just surrounding the stigma, and I think that by breaking down that stigma, it will help people to have better access to care for incontinence and being able to speak openly about incontinence, because it's something that is stigmatized, and we need to work to remove that and make it a more positive conversation, I suppose.
Yeah, I definitely think embarrassment can come into it as well, or even just confusion. Especially if you're someone who may not have had prior health conditions, or you're young, or that you haven't had children yet, or any of those other things that might be, I guess, usually connected to any sort of incontinence. It can be confusing and embarrassing, and you may not really even know who to turn to. And so I think there's a lot of factors that can come into play that affect the ability to seek help. But yeah, I think it's a good thing once you do, and maybe just starting that conversation means that more people are able to start that journey earlier.
Thank you, Jess and Susan.
Yeah, I just want to second the embarrassment side of things, but I think too, and I don't know if this is a reflection of how difficult it is for some people in communities to find a regular GP. Like my GP, I've seen her for the last 5 years, and I have a very open and trusting relationship, I don't feel embarrassed to tell her anything. So I think that's another barrier where maybe in a rural community, you know, you've got limited access to services, or you come to a city where big GP centres can be just like in and out, and you don't feel comfortable talking to that particular doctor about what your situation is. So, and I think for me, like I would be lost without my GP.
Absolutely, Susan. And I've been lucky to actually have the same GP my entire life. And I think that we're not all that lucky to have such a regular contact in the health system. Just
Sorry, you just prompted me. Thank you, Susan. I think finances is also another massive thing.
Yes.
I think, you know, whether it be having access to specialists or even with a lot of privatisation of GP clinics, but also if you're a younger person too, accessing specialists and being able to afford them can be really, really difficult, let alone the continence aids that we need. And so I think finances is a massive, massive thing.
Thank you. And I think the Continence Foundation, they have a national continence helpline for anyone that's listening that offers fantastic support. And I think that can be an excellent navigational source. And I think once you break down that embarrassment and stigma, you're able to actually then access that support. And I found that for me, I didn't actually recognize that I had incontinence or that it was something that could even change. And I found that was really my barrier actually for seeking help. We have a question from Emily. How do you find correct pull-ups? So I'm allergic to wool and I don't like using the plastic ones. And this is mainly for urinary incontinence. Does anyone have, yeah, perfect, Jess.
I don't know if my hand is still raised, but I find that I started using period underwear, the reusable period underwear, and a lot of brands have adaptable underwear. So if you have dexterity issues as well, it's been great in hospital, believe me. And they also have ranges that are made for people that have like bladder leakage or urinary incontinence, and for every, you know, gender as well. So I wear them now every day, you know, nothing else, and that's where I turn to.
Yeah, I second that.
Yeah, fantastic. So you have a question from Justin. So why do you think that incontinence isn't being talked about, and how can we create a safe space to speak out about this topic?
I think there's a lot, like very much a lack of representation for incontinence, especially in the media and even just in seeking healthcare. And I think that especially for a lot of young people, they struggle to have something to, or somebody to identify with, because incontinence is often something that's associated with the elderly, I suppose. And I think that especially among young people, for example, it's difficult to talk about, and the conversation just doesn't happen because there's a lack of representation for incontinence for young people, and nothing for us to, I suppose, identify with.
Absolutely, Jordan. Jess. Got a lot of hands up.
I think my thing is still raised from before, but I definitely agree that you know, without that representation and seeing yourself there in the media, doing things like, you know, ads, TV, whatever else, runways, I think once that ball started rolling in other areas, that's when those conversations really started happening, because we were seen, and you know, I was seeing myself more. And I think the way to really start those conversations is for us to be represented in the communities and by businesses, and just show that we're just everyday people, just like everyone else. And, you know, therefore there's no shame in it, and there doesn't need to be.
Thank you, Jess. And Christin, I know you're going to have a brilliant answer to this. Go for it, please.
Well, Jordan and Jess really just like absolutely nailed like everything that's part of my story, that there is just a lot of shame that comes from misrepresentation, that it is seen as something that's an elderly issue, while it absolutely is a prevalent problem within the elderly community. It is something that a lot of young people experience. And for more just of an anecdotal kind of topic here, I didn't know until about 3 to 4 years ago that this was something commonly happening to young people. I didn't know until I was well into my adult years, because someone like you, Anna, told me. That's how bad the information was about coming across about young people with incontinence within my little bubble, my little sphere. And one thing that I wanted to add on to, yes, that we absolutely need that representation in the media. But one thing that I would always like to talk about is representation on the paraphernalia that you find at hospitals. Because every time that I've gone to see a specialist, like there's been wonderful, absolutely wonderful signs and representation for elderly people on the walls and on pamphlets, but I never see anything that represents people of my age group. And when you're a young person and you're going into those waiting rooms and you're maybe the one and only person, say under 50, that's there, it's a bit invalidating. That's more like that's a very personal experience that have happened in my life. I'm wondering if anyone else in the audience that is my age, within the mid-20s or even younger 20s or even teenagers, and have experienced and have noticed that when they've gone to urinary specialists at hospitals.
Yeah, thank you for that, Christin. I even remember just waiting in a urology waiting room from when I was, 16 to now, and I'm still the only young person there. And hearing even that you're in those waiting rooms too, Christin, I'm like, oh, thank goodness, I must not be the only one. We just don't have appointments at the same urologist or at the same time. But it is an incredibly isolating feeling. And I think you just touched on that word of validation. And it's validating to know that other people can experience the same things, and that that you're not alone.
Yeah, that would have helped. I wouldn't say that it completely would have cured my mental anguish during that time of overcoming the initial years of me having incontinence, but it probably would have helped a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Christin. Susan.
Oh, I love listening to everyone's stories and thinking about, the marketing of incontinence pads is generally older people. And I don't like saying the young or the youth or the elderly, because when you put the in front of something, it creates a separation. What do you call it? That separation of, for instance, older people aren't represented as being sexual beings. Hello. Still going to be having sex. But what I wanted to say was, I think from this discussion, and I know there's a lot of people who have registered, let's jump on and write to and make a lot of noise to Channel 7, 9, Netflix, Stan, all the production companies, Screen Queensland, and say, hey, let's start having some storylines around people of all ages, but I acknowledge definitely younger people need to have a strong message that things can happen, such as an illness that are life-changing, and you may be left with incontinence from the treatment or from the procedures. So it does need to be picked up. So let's get in touch with Triple J and get them to be talking about this on Hack, and they probably have covered it once before. I'm out of touch with what their programming's been like, but we have to make some noise and make the change. We can't just sit here and talk about this here. We need to take it out. So I'll put my hand up to do that as well, if anyone wants to join me.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Susan. And there was also a question in the chat around how does the Continence Foundation of Australia help and what more can be done to help. And Nicole put in there the National Continence Helpline, but the Continence Foundation does so much, from policy submissions to education to providing direct support to having an excellent marketing and comms team that helped to put this event together, and then contacting a ton of different media channels. So I think it is about making noise, and it is about pushing the message out there and changing the narrative around incontinence. Jess, over to you.
Sorry. Just wanted to add, in terms of having conversations and how that really helps you find your people, I guess. It was only through the fact that I already spoke a lot about my experiences and everything with my network of friends, that one of them turned to me one day and started speaking about how they were suddenly having to go through this journey as well. And so I think, you know, even just breaking down that a kind of awkwardness that can happen sometimes around these conversations when you're talking about it means that you never know, there might be someone else in your group of friends that suddenly turns around and goes, oh my goodness, it's not just me, thank you. You know, it's one of those things where I think we are surrounded by people in our lives who are going through similar journeys in one way or another to us, and it isn't until we actually, I think, let those barriers down and be open with each other and, you know, step away from that fear and take that leap of faith that others will turn around and be relieved to hear themselves kind of echoed back.
Definitely. That's where I felt a change in me and how I accepted myself. And we have a fantastic question that's just come through. And thank you so much, Justin, for that question that opened up such a wonderful conversation. But we have a question from Millie. As a 20-year-old woman now, I've struggled mentally, especially accepting this from being a teen, feeling alienated and struggling. How do you improve self-acceptance, build confidence around this, and feel less alone in real life? I think we can all resonate with that. So thank you so much for that, Millie.
I'm happy to go first. My journey to, I think, accepting myself with all my disabilities and the continuing journey with that was actually stemmed from recovery from an eating disorder, and a friend prompted me to do a artistic photo shoot. And I'd never had in my mind ever to do any sort of modeling or anything, but I did that photo shoot, and then since then I've done more and more, and then I've done acting, and it's just, I've managed to start finding much more, I think, respect for myself and for what my body has carried me through. I've managed to drop away the anger and the shame and the things that I've put on myself for those things. And I've managed to gain a confidence to speak to people, to government, to like internationally as well, about my journey from, you know, one end to the other, so to speak, I guess. But yeah, I think there are things here and there that you can do. I'm not saying you have to jump in front of a camera or anything like that right now, but sometimes it's just this accidental happening, and all of a sudden things take a shift and it goes from there.
Yeah, beautiful, Jess. Thank you. Christin.
Mine came from learning that I shouldn't have shame from it, and people weren't going to judge me for it. I had people in my life that I had known for years and years, and they were very close to me, and I told them almost anything except this about my urinary incontinence, because again, as we were talking about, that there's not much reinforcement that it is a common and normal thing for you to have. In my young brain at the time, I was certain that if I had told people, if I had made them aware of my situation, they wouldn't want to be friends with me anymore. So I kept it pretty tight-lipped and pretty secret. And then a few years ago, I wrote an opinion piece for the very first time, and I spoke about it publicly. So in my little circle, I had about 5 or 6 people that knew about my situation. Some people had a little brief understanding of why I might have to chuff off to the bathroom every once in a while, or why I had to buy a lot of period pads, but no one really knew the true story and really what I went through. And when I did the opinion piece, it took about 2 weeks for me to get the courage to post it onto my socials and to tell the world. And that's okay. Like, I didn't push myself because I wasn't ready at that time. I was proud of me for speaking, but I just had that time to be comfortable with the words that I was saying, read over my opinion piece, and just realize, wow, I've come so far about my emotional view of my situation, and physically how I've learned to alleviate a lot of the problems that I have been having. Even if I didn't have an answer to why I have urinary incontinence, I was able to work out how to go around my life, even if I had to make a few changes, without possibly stopping myself from doing all the wonderful things that I've been able to achieve in life. And taking that time to reach out to people was incredible, even if I had to wait a little while, because the reaction that I got was all 100% positive, and that was incredible. I would never have expected that. Yeah.
Thank you, Christin. I think it's very interesting, like taking the time to process, being ready to speak about it, and then having that positive response when you do. Yeah, Susan.
If I could see, or if I was with Millie, I just want to give you a big hug and just say, it doesn't matter if you have a little bit of wee and poo coming out of your body. What matters is what you do with your heart and how you treat people. And it's all about perspective and how you view your life. So your value is not related to your wee and your poo, okay? I mean, look, I pooed my bed at night time. Hello, it's happened. But it doesn't stop my partner from loving me, and it doesn't stop me from loving myself. I've weed my pants at work. I just had to deal with it. And I don't want to, swear, but I know this doesn't happen overnight, but I've learned not to care what other people think, because those people who are making those judgments, you don't need those people in your life. Okay, they're not your tribe. Your tribe are the ones who see you for who you are as Millie, who'll have a chuckle with you. Like when my ex-husband had his colostomy bag, he was really struggling to deal with that. And I don't know if anyone's been in the surfer, but I called him poo shooter. Sorry. He didn't like it at first. It was only a joke between the two of us, but he got it because it was like the dog, and he did. He poo shot out of his stoma. So, but you just build that attitude, get a journal, write down, find your tribe to talk to. I'm so glad you're here tonight, because you've probably cracked the bubble for yourself. And and if I could give you a hug, I'd bloody squeeze you tight and just say, don't judge yourself. Just find the right people and keep them around you. And do what Jess said about the photo shoot. That's a fantastic investment in you.
Yeah, Millie, reach out to us. We'll organise a photo shoot with you. Come, we'll have an incontinence photo shoot together. Geordie, over to you. And thank you, Susan. That was so beautiful.
Yeah, so I second what Susan says. I would give you a massive hug right now, Millie. You're a beautiful human. And I guess from sort of anecdotal experience here, when I first got a colostomy, prior to actually getting a colostomy, I thought it was the end of the world. And I thought that for a long time. I thought that my life would be over the second I got a bag. And when I got my colostomy, something that I personally found that helped me with my self-esteem and feeling beautiful, I suppose, and feeling, I don't know, somewhat, I guess, normal, even though I don't like using that word because it's just a silly word, but it helped me to feel more myself, I suppose. I gave my colostomy a name because it separated it from me. So then when it was making funny noises, and if it leaked or if it smelt bad or something along the lines of that, I could just blame little old Piglet. I found that it just helped to be able to give it another name and separate it from myself. But also, at the end of the day, we all go to the toilet one way or another. That's the thing. We all do it. We all we all poo. And I just think that, some of us just go a different way to others. Some of us struggle with incontinence, and it is what it is. And everyone goes to the toilet one way or another. So I think it's just understanding that there's so many more people out there who have difficulties with incontinence than you realize. And I also found that by speaking openly on social media about my struggles with incontinence, that really helped me to find my people. And also, I found that by speaking about it on social media, I was putting it out there, even though I didn't want to put it out there, because, at the end of the day, I think we all would rather be talking about something else. We You know what I mean? We'd rather be talking about something else. But by speaking about it, basically, it just meant that people who come into my life, friends, partners, and things like that, they already knew about it. It wasn't a difficult conversation that I had to have with them. I didn't have to sort of explain it because they already knew about it from social media. And that was kind of a way to, I don't know, it just made me feel better about myself knowing that I didn't have to have that conversation with anybody, because 9 times out of 10, they'd already seen it on Instagram or TikTok or something. So
it's just like, just look me up on Google before we have a date or something. Yeah.
Yes, like that resonates with me, because when I decided to start
But then, yeah, I should try. Yeah.
advocacy, I thought that if I'm not brave enough to speak up, and I had, you know, a career in modeling before, I thought, you know, who can I expect to speak up about this? And so I started, and now if you Google my name, it's, you know, model with embarrassing bowel condition, model with no bowel control. And so now when I go on dates, that's what guys know about. And when I went on a date recently, it was the same time this Born Different video of me came out, where I was talking about incontinence, and he was on Snapchat at the time, and he scrolled past and it had me, Born Different, and it goes, and I'm incontinent and I'm proud. And I just thought, oh my goodness. Like, so it's, yeah, I think it's something that you just have to be proud about.
Yeah.
Put it out
When
there.
you find, sorry.
And like Geordie said, then it saves the conversation, to be honest.
And when you find your tribe, like, you know, you do find, like Jordan said, that you are just able to talk about these things. Like, I talked to my friends the other day about how, like, I have a PEG feeding tube, and how my stomach had literally just like done its own full-blown fart for about 2 minutes, and I was just lying there in hospital going, oh my God. And then I'd laugh at myself and it would make it worse, and it would just spiral into this cycle. And, you know, like, we just have that ability to talk about these things with each other. We're all kind of like disabled, queer, and mix of everything basically, which makes it a bit easier. But we do that. We have the black humor. We come up with the nicknames. We came up with a nickname from a brain tumor, like all of these things. And it does just mean that it's just feels more natural, and you just are able to go, oh my God, this happened today, and then laugh it off and you get on with it.
Thank you, Jess. Geordie, we'll go to you, and then we've got a lot of questions that have come through.
I just wanted to say that, hang on, let me turn the hand thing off. There we go. I just wanted to say that other people care less about our incontinence than we do the majority of the time. In fact, I think we're probably the biggest critics of ourselves. I think other people don't even pay that much attention to it, as far as I'm aware. It's more us being critical of ourselves.
100%.
Thank you for that, Geordie. So Lena asks, how does incontinence affect your daily lives now? Are friends and family supportive and understanding?
I'll jump in here. Majority of the ways that it impacts my life now is that I just have to remember every morning that when I'm getting up to go to work, as again, this is just from my experience with what I experienced with incontinence, I need to make sure that I have enough supply of period pads, because that is the products that I use for my incontinence. I need to make sure that I have enough. If I don't have any, I need to make sure that I have time during the day to go and grab some more. And I need to remind myself that when I'm going through this process and I'm feeling like, oh, I'm spending so much money, why do I have this problem? I just have to remind myself that you have a solution that helps you alleviate I don't like saying fix. I don't like saying fix, but helps you alleviate the stress during the day. That it takes about 5 seconds to change the pad, and then you can go out, go back to work and be awesome. And so I like to say that the greatest effect that incontinence had on me was mentally, because overcoming shame. And I have to remind myself every day that there's no need for shame. There is no room for shame in this house, in this brain. Because even though, as I said before, I may have to make a few changes about how I go about my day, but I can still get everything done that I wanted to do. Just have to take a 5-minute bathroom break every once in a while.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christin. Sometimes a little more than 5 minutes in my case.
Yeah.
Maybe a little longer.
I try and make it tight.
Yeah. Susan, over to you.
Yeah, I just want to give some practical tips, and just on the tail end of Christin's shame cannot live in the light.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's why conversations like these and a gathering of like-minded people and people with lived experience is so important. So what was the original question, Anja? Because I got quite invested with what Christin was saying.
How does incontinence affect your daily lives now? And are your friends and family supportive and understanding?
Okay. Well, I've only recently actually had the conversation with one of my sisters about my experience of incontinence. It's just hadn't occurred to me to talk about it, but I'd been having nighttime incontinence while I've been sleeping, and as a child, I actually experienced bedwetting up until I was about 12, and I'm not sure if it's a genetic thing. It was quite prevalent in my mum's family, in the daughters, and my own daughter experienced that until she was about 8. But just every now and then, I don't know, my brain and my bladder just don't talk. And so, and I was staying with my sister, and I said, look, this is what happened to me last night. So I had a period pad, and I said, please grab me a towel. So I used that. But with my bowel incontinence from my medications, I dare not pass wind, because I don't know what's going to happen. So I have to, if I'm going to pass wind, I need to go to the toilet. So I do try to plan, like working, try to not have meetings around 9 o'clock, because that tends to be my bowel o'clock working. But also from having diarrhea, I discovered a fantastic product, and I won't name drop here, but I guess I can send it through to the Continence Foundation. It's made out of kiwi fruit, and it's a gel. So instead of using like a Huggies wipe to wipe my bottom, which you can't flush that down the toilet, this is a gel that you can just put onto your toilet paper, and it's been a lifesaver. I love the feeling of being clean from it, and I take it with me when I'm traveling usually. When I'm being intimate or actually plan my sex life, we don't really have spontaneous activity, but it's, I just make sure I've been to the toilet. I do a check-in with my body, see how my tummy is. Have I been experiencing a lot of wind? And I'm on big whoopee cushion some nights. It's just there. You just deal with it and not make a big fuss out of it.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. I think that when we've been dealing with something for a while, it can so easily be something that's in our routine, that we just do these little things to manage it. And then it doesn't necessarily have to be huge, like a huge deal, but it's just something that we do and we manage along the way. Geordie, over to you.
Hi. Incontinence affects bowel incontinence affects my life pretty significantly. And more so when I had a loop colostomy. I've had a couple of different types of colostomies. But when I had a loop colostomy, I would have incontinence. I suppose like having a colostomy itself, it makes you incontinent, but I would also then have overflow that would then come out the traditional way, I suppose. And because you're so used to having a bag, then when you've got incontinence from both ends, it's kind of a little bit tricky. And I would find that it meant that I had to pack extra supplies everywhere that I went, things like extra underwear, extra pull-ups and things like that, extra pads, all of those sorts of things. And I guess because I'm not somebody who works at the present time, I suppose, it doesn't affect my work life, but I'd imagine if I was working at the moment, I think I would just have to take extra toilet breaks to be able to empty my bag and things like that. But my family and friends have been more than supportive. And I think most of the time they like to just have a laugh about the situation with me. Like if my colostomy decides that it wants to start making noise out in public, they just laugh it off with me. And I think that's That's the best thing that you can do, honestly. You've got to sometimes poke a little bit of fun at yourself to make light of the situation and make yourself feel a bit more comfortable. But it's always good when you've got friends and family who are understanding of how much incontinence impacts your life and what they can do to help in those situations.
Fantastic, Geordie. Thank you for that. Christin.
I just wanted to reaffirm what both Susan and Geordie was saying, that humor is, as Geordie was saying, humor is fantastic to get through the days and all the little moments. If you fart during a meeting or something, which I have done, but also, as Susan said, it's always important to be kind to yourself, because and for anyone in the chat, that's especially for I think our friend Millie there, that you always need to be kind to yourself, that you didn't ask to go through what you were going through. It is just something that happened with the roll of the dice in life, and that's okay. You have to be kind to yourself and listen to your body. So that's kind of thing, listening through the day. Like if you feel any tension of your stomach, if you feel that you're going to get wind, if that's kind of the situation that you're in, listen to your body. That's, yeah, just wanted to mirror those two things because I thought they were super, super important.
Yeah, thank you. Beautifully summarized and reinforced, Christin. Jess.
I guess I just wanted to add in, and remember that, we are people who have had time to adjust and to get used to it, and it has become part of our everyday routines and lives, and we've had that time to actually mentally, I think, kind of like get our minds around it as well and build our communities and connect with our communities too. And so I know there might be some people out there right now who are going, well, I can't just laugh it off. It's really awkward. It's really hard. There's no one I know. And that is completely understandable because we have been there and we're just further down the track. And so, in the meantime, remember that, you've met people, you've seen people talk who are further down the track, who work, who laugh, who have communities and friends and families that are really supportive, and they're always going to be there and around you and on socials and all of that sort of stuff too. And never underestimate the impact that having support, especially in regards to mental health support, it's a big transition and change, and it can be really difficult. And we are definitely not underestimating that at all. And so, there is no shame in reaching out for, seeing a counsellor or a psychologist or a continence nurse, someone who can help and guide you, as well as lived experience people like ourselves.
Yeah, I think Jess, you raised that point so beautifully, that we have had to process it, and that's why we're here and talking to you about it today. But I think no matter how long you've had to process it, there will still be really hard days and really crap moments. Like I've been incontinent, fecally incontinent my entire life, and I can guarantee you that I still feel crap. I still cry about it. I still crap my pants and cry and just think I cannot do this anymore. It's just too hard. And why is this happening to me? But then it's, picking yourself up again and thinking, it's okay. Like I know all these other incredible people who go through the same and who I can call up, and I'm not going through it alone. But yeah, I think it's okay to realize it's crap, but it's also okay to get on with it. And I know that's not a good way of putting it either. Jess, you were speaking a little bit about other health professional support, and I just wanted to throw this question to you quickly, and we've got quite a few questions to get through in 15 minutes. So if anyone has any burning questions, add them onto our extensive list. So we've had a question from Monique. And so it was about involvement of occupational therapists or other allied health professionals in the management and of incontinence. So Monique's studying OT and feels like incontinence is such an important area of practice, but not addressed enough, especially when it's stopping people from doing the things that's important to them. Yes, I know that you see OTs and quite a few allied health professionals. Do they help with your incontinence or discuss this sort of thing with you, or do you feel like they could be better equipped?
I definitely think that sorry.
Not saying bad things about your health professionals.
No. I definitely think that there are some that can be better equipped. OTs and stuff, they're meant to be able to assist you and guide you and even support you, especially if you're an NDS participant. in gaining funding and having support to gain access and have these resources available. I think it's also difficult because I know when I started my tube feeding journey, finding a peg nurse and a stomach care nurse was really, really hard. I called everywhere. And in the end, I was desperate and reached out on a community page. And then all of a sudden, like, miracle, amazing nurse, and hello, if you are there. Hi. But yeah, so I think that there definitely can be a lot more done to both equip and give knowledge and raise awareness and help give the skills to the people who actually need them, because they're the people that help open those doors for us when we're feeling lost. We need to be able to turn to them. So yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much, Jess. We have a question from Melita. So we did speak a little bit about the difference between old and young and incontinence. Does anyone think there's a difference between genders and the perception of incontinence? Susan.
Yes. I cannot recall seeing any advertising material that was centered on male incontinence. It's always female focused from what I've seen. You know, the wives' tale, and I know this does happen, but you know, if you've had children, then the chances of you having some sort of bladder issue with incontinence is a possibility. So so I think it is gendered to the female experience, and definitely to the older person's experience, which we're all going to change, aren't we?
Of course. We'll tackle it all. Jess.
I think in my experience, both those gender diverse backgrounds, the representation is still very scarce. I've noticed a couple of brands doing it now, which is great. I think, you know, I don't identify as male myself or anything, but I think as someone who's femme and who was born as AFAB, that conversations around incontinence, especially bladder leakage and stuff, tend to happen more naturally, especially given that, you know, people are of childbearing age or were giving birth to children. I think it just tends to be part of that journey, if you have a uterus and all of that. But I think that there's also that differentiation in seeking support or speaking to your friends or your clique of friends or whatever about you know, challenges that you're going through when you're I think looking at the difference in genders, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you, Jess. Geordie.
I think that with urinary incontinence, I definitely think that there's a lot more representation for women, or yeah, I just definitely think it's more what's the word for it? Sorry, representation for women. But when it comes to bowel incontinence, I feel like there's a lack of representation even for everyone in general. I think it's not that we see a lot of urinary incontinence representation, because there's a lack for both, but I think more so for bowel incontinence. And I think that men or those who identify as men struggle to talk about it more than women do in most cases. And particularly with bowel incontinence, I think it's kind of like men's mental health. It's a conversation that isn't open enough, and I think that it needs to be talked about more among men. And I think a lot of that comes down to the shame and the stigma surrounding it and masculinity, I guess. I think that they have a lot more difficulty opening up and talking about bowel incontinence and urinary incontinence, but I think more so bowel incontinence among the men. Yeah. I know that, like, even having a conversation as someone who's a female and is, I guess, fecally incontinent, even having a conversation about it with my dad finds it awkward. I talk to him about my colostomy and I make all sorts of jokes about it, but my dad finds it awkward and uncomfortable. And I think that that's because it's not something that's talked about enough among men.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Geordie. And I think that so many parallels can be made with incontinence and, you know, other things that have had stigma around it historically. And you can see that their progress have been made in different areas like mental health, like how we can openly talk about periods now. I feel at least we can openly talk about periods now. And I think that incontinence, or the incontinence movement, I'm going to call it, can learn a lot from that. And I think that ties in beautifully with the next question. How do you think we can encourage more people to talk about incontinence and seek help?
I think
Start
from
talking, share.
sorry.
Sorry.
We all have an answer.
Basically, yeah, start talking, have the conversations. And if you're not ready for that, that's okay. Like, share resources, or generally raise awareness. And yeah, I think it's all about, if we get that ball rolling, more will follow.
I might go to Christin next, and then Geordie.
No, Christin.
Again, I'm speaking from very anecdotal from my experience. I think a lot of the barriers that prevented me from reaching out is the basically being completely unaware that this was not a rare thing for the young people. I thought I was a one in a million, but not in a good way, if that makes sense. I can't find the word in my brain right at the moment, but I thought I was an oddity in a way. Just to say briefly, because with my mental health, I called myself a lot of awful things when I first went through this. But I think reinforcement that you are not alone, that there are in your community, you don't know who else may be going through this. There could be other people that you know that may also be experiencing this. You don't know, and that's okay. But reinforcing that it's not something to be like, it is natural to feel shame, and that's okay, but it's not something that you should be feeling shame for. And I think with less stigmatization, doesn't matter what demographic, what age group, I can only speak from assigned female, and within teenage years and 20s, that the more I became aware that I wasn't an issue, that I wasn't a problem with who I am in life, that made me more confident to reach out and find answers.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. That's just beautifully put. Geordie, and then Susan, you can go straight after Geordie.
Actually forgotten what the question is. Came my brain.
No worries. How do you think we can encourage more people to talk about incontinence and seek help?
Yeah. So I think that a lot of the stigma and a lot of the shame surrounding incontinence and the conversation around incontinence comes from the societal norms that are in place that basically tell us what is normal and what is not. And that's why I was saying before, I can't stand the word normal and abnormal, because it separates the two things. And I think by making incontinence a thing, making it so separate from the norm, we're moving further away, from normalizing it. I think that normalizing it is basically accepting that it is a part of so many people's lives. And I think that when we try and, sorry, I'm having a bit of brain fog at the moment. Lost track of what I was saying halfway through I was saying. But yeah, I think that just sort of breaking away from those societal norms. Society tells us that normal is not having issues with continence. However, that's just moving further and further away from what we're trying to get to, which is normalizing incontinence and not necessarily making it a thing that we consider to be abnormal. It should just be a normal thing for us to talk about.
Thank you, Geordie. I completely agree. Susan?
And I know we're getting close to time, so I'll just try and summarise this in 25 words or less. Like anything that's bad news, you need a good PR campaign, okay? It should be on the national health agenda with a top-down approach from government that meets a grassroots campaign. This is a good start. I have to be honest with you, my experience of incontinence has been a very individual one. I've never networked with anybody else other than telling my family and my friends. I've got a dash, I've got a weak bladder, and sometimes a little bit of poo might come out. But It just needs a campaign to get it immersed and embedded in the everyday dialogue, to see it in Home and Away, to see it, you know, on a television show, on TV, and to hear it talked about and see it on the back of a bus, and that it's part of life and that you don't have to be alone.
I sense that photo shoot.
Sorry, what was that, Jess?
Photo shoot.
Yes.
We have a photo
I think
shoot.
we should do that.
You can
Do
sign
it.
up in the chat. So we only have 3 minutes left, and I have a vision question, but I was hoping we could do a really quick, one person could answer this question from Shelter in our Q&A. Why is there not enough education about continence products? Does anyone have a brilliant answer to this? We don't know why, there just isn't. Like,
No.
I'm really sorry.
I
Yeah.
wish I had a great answer for you, but I don't.
Yeah. So, yeah, unfortunately, we're not sure, Shelter, but there really does need to be. I think it's part of the campaign that we're planning. So our final question, or my final question for the panel, is what is your vision for the future for people living with incontinence? I'll start with Susan. It's your first up.
I'd just like to see people feeling comfortable raising and going identifying that they've need help, that they can talk openly about it, connect with others, and don't feel isolated, don't feel ashamed. Just incorporate it as matter of fact, day-to-day activity of your daily living.
Thank you, Susan. Beautiful. Geordie. Oh, you're muted.
Not again. I would just love for people, like Susan said, to feel comfortable, for them to feel supported, not isolated, and for them to feel that incontinence is something that they can talk about openly without having to worry that, you know, you can bring up that sort of thing in a conversation and people don't even flinch. It's just a normal part of life. And yeah.
Thank you, Geordie. Yes.
I think it's to be able to be having these conversations, to see ourselves represented, to have a laugh over it with our friends without feeling awkward or shameful, and to share those experiences and not have so much trouble finding community and finding resources and assistance. I think that that's really important. You know, I want to be able to have a laugh like I do with the nurses, and when they ask me where I got my underwear from, and I'm able to just go, yeah, da, 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 da. You know, so yeah, I think I just want to see us on the back of buses and be like, hey, yeah, we exist, so what, get on with the day.
Thank you, Jess. And Christin, bring us home. What's your vision?
I think everyone had some incredible answers, and I think I'd just like to see more acknowledgement of our existence in medical settings. I'd like to see, I know it's so small in comparison to all the things that could possibly happen for us, but I'd just like to see a poster on the wall of someone my age with incontinence, whether it is urinal or fecal. So when I go into that scary doctor's office, because sometimes it does feel a bit scary, I think, okay, I am safe here, I am understood here, and they will listen to me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christin. And most of all, thank you to the audience for coming and joining us for the last hour. It has been such a beautiful hour. I have loved spending the time with you and the wonderful panelists, and know that if you're experiencing incontinence, you now have 5 new friends that also experience it. So thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night and the state of origin if you're watching it tonight.
Go Queensland.
Everyone else is like shameful.
Is that what the balloons in the foyer are, like red, gold, something?
Yeah, maroon.
I
It's
was
the
so
maroon.
confused. I almost ran into them with my wheelchair.
There
Sorry.
it is.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much to the Continence Foundation for making this event possible. And they have so many fantastic resources. And I hope to see you all on the back of a bus soon with us in our fantastic photo shoot. So everyone, see you soon. Bye.
Bye.